Meet Mohammed Abu Mina al-Gaddafi, the man behind the legend, commonly known as Muammar Gaddafi. This African visionary and revolutionary force made his debut on June 7, 1942, in the picturesque setting of Qasr Abu Hadi, Libya. Brace yourself for a journey through time, as Gaddafi held the reins of Libya's destiny for an impressive 42-year stretch, from 1969 to 2011. As Gaddafi ascended to power, he embarked on a quest to redefine the Libyan state. The birth of the Libyan Arab Jamahiriya signaled an audacious experiment, a stateless society where political power belonged to the people. It is good to note that his rule ended when he was captured and killed on October 20, 2011. After the Battle of Sirte, many people attached his death to several causes or reasons, but in this video, you shall discover the real reason why he was killed. Gaddafi was captured by the National Transitional Council forces in Libya and was killed after several accusations. Looking at the number of reasons why Muammar Gaddafi was killed, you might begin to wonder if this was because of excess dictatorship, and if it was, then you might also wonder the type of leadership such a dictator had before his death. Muammar Gaddafi went to take refuge in a large drainage pipe, accompanied by a good number of bodyguards, when the National Transitional Council fighters came. They opened fire, which saw the demise of the long-hunted Gaddafi. Here is the real reason why he was killed. As earlier mentioned, Gaddafi was killed after being accused of several actions and attempts, most especially his desire to put forth an African gold-backed currency known as the gold dinar. According to credible and reliable sources, he was not killed for humanitarian purposes, but for power, oil, and money. Gaddafi suffered torture from the Western National Transitional Forces before finally giving up the ghost at the Battle of Sirte. If Gaddafi had succeeded to establish such a monetary system in Africa, the United States of America, Asia, and Europe would have been forced to buy oil and minerals in the African gold-backed currency, which would have tipped up sales. Gaddafi was strongly pushing this agenda via the African Union, especially when he was the chairman in 2009. The idea was greatly turned down by the Western powers because it will devalue their currencies and work negatively on their economies, and as a result, they would have less or no control over African countries. In other words, Gaddafi's plans for Africa would have put an end to neocolonialism. NATO's plan to kill Gaddafi is the same as that of Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was assassinated by the US, partly because he chose to sell his country's oil in the euro currency at the expense of the United States dollars. Now, the United States was scared and skeptical about the instability the gold dinar will cause to its economy. Hussein's decision to sell oil in the euro was a blow to the United States, worsened by the proclamation that the dollar was the currency of the enemy. All these would have brought back another currency war, which in history was very common, especially in intra-Western and Middle East countries. According to the International Monetary Fund's report, Libya's central bank in 2011 possessed an estimated amount of 144 tons of gold in its vaults. Muammar Gaddafi envisioned the implementation of a gold-backed currency, anticipating its adoption by all African and Muslim nations. Despite harboring this vision, he was wary of potential competition with the euro and the dollar. How the United States got to know about the gold dinar? A senior advisor to the United States President Sidney Blumenthal indicated to his Secretary General Hillary Clinton through an email that Gaddafi's government was holding 143 tons of gold and similar amounts of silver in their bank. In late March 2011, these stocks were taken to the southwest direction of Libya's border with Niger and Chad. More heat was added to the matter when former French President Nicolas Sarkozy, who also had interest in Libya, learned about the gold and silver that the country had. He also, therefore, embarked on attacking Libya. Some of Sarkozy's plans was to gain a share in Libyan oil production, to increase their French influence in this country and North Africa, to improve his internal political situation in France, to provide the French military with a chance to regain its position in the world, and to address Gaddafi's plans of freeing the so-called Francophone Africa from the parasitic French control. Hillary Clinton, the then United States Secretary of State, after hearing this, sought to prevent creation of such a currency in Africa. This hard currency would have allowed Africa to shake off the last heavy chains of colonial exploitation in the continent. The allegedly leaked email of Hillary Clinton had far-reaching implications on the fluid state of post-colonial relations with the West. If this is to be likened to something, then it is an eye-opener where Africa seeks to build an independent economic structure. The West is seen to try and derail those plans so as to retain its primacy in world affairs. That is why Gaddafi saw an unexpected death, due to his desire to get Africa and Muslim states a new currency. If you were just joining us, then you are watching the real reason why Gaddafi was killed. Like the video and share it, so it reaches many more Africans. You can also subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell in order not to miss any of our amazing content. Let us talk more about the gold dinar, a groundbreaking dream for Africa. Gaddafi's aim with the introduction of this new currency was to reroute oil revenues into state-controlled funds rather than American banks. In essence, the goal was to curtail the reliance on the dollar for oil transactions in African nations, with a particular focus on countries like Nigeria, Tunisia, Egypt, and Angola. In fact, these countries were ready to change their currency as soon as the golden dinar was launched. Unfortunately, in March 2011, NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization coalition forces, began a military action in Libya in the name of freedom and humanitarian concerns. Unfortunately, many ignorant Libyans listened and believed the Western media instead of backing their leader. Gaddafi succeeded to rule Libya for over 42 years because he managed to gain support of many Libyan tribes by providing them with free water, almost free gasoline, free health system, as well as cheap and affordable education. The passing of Gaddafi signaled the conclusion of an African dream. Muammar Gaddafi sought to distance himself from American influence in his oil dealings by advocating for the golden dinar. Initiating a project for this currency, he garnered substantial support from fellow African nations eager to join his cause. This was an African dream, but at the same time it was going to be a nightmare for Western banking, which greatly benefits the USA and most European countries. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization's forces were involved in Gaddafi's capture, while the Libyan military were also on the ground to enhance defense. The NATO forces opened fire in a pipeline hideout, where Gaddafi was seeking refuge, wounding him on the leg and back. According to one of the unnamed National Transitional Council fighters, one of Gaddafi's own loyalists also shot him, apparently to spare him from being captured. Few minutes later, as the fighting continued, Muammar Gaddafi was killed. Several videos related to his death were shown on television and circulated on the internet. The leader was killed alongside his son, Muammar Gaddafi, and they were buried a few days after their assassination. Let's look at other reasons that led to the killing of Muammar Gaddafi. Besides all what you have watched about why Muammar Gaddafi was killed, there are also points from credible media sources that facilitated this process as a strong and very dynamic leader loved by the people of Libya. There were some things Gaddafi did for the people which were not pleasing in the eyes of his opponents. One, in Libya there was no payment for electricity during Gaddafi's reign. Electricity was free for all citizens. Fuel, education, and healthcare were almost free or close to nothing for most Libyans to afford. 2. With an excellent management of oil revenues, the Libyan state had managed to store hundreds of tons of about 143 tons of gold, according to WikiLeaks, and the same amount of silver. All these resources were going to make Libya the most influential country in Africa, supplanting France, for instance. 3. There were no interest on loans in Libyan banks and state-owned financial enterprises. Loans were given at 0% interest rate by law. 4. Living in a house was a must-have issue for all Libyans. Gaddafi even found that his parents would not get a house until everyone in Libya had one. In fact, having a house in Libya was considered a human right. 5. All newly wedded couples in Libya received money from the government to build their new apartments. 6. Necessities were given out freely or at very affordable prices to Libyans to better their lives. Amongst others, all these were seen as provocative and dictatorial to those who were not in support of Gaddafi's projects, which at the end culminated to some fighting and subsequent killing of the revolutionary leader of Libya. All these other reasons why Gaddafi was killed are gotten from the Muslim Times media source. Gaddafi even carried out the world's largest irrigation project in Libya, the Great Man-Made River. This project utilized giant pipes to send fresh water from the Nubian sandstone aquifer system, fossil aquifer, across Libya, and it was fully funded by the Libyan government. No loans from the INF or China. Unfortunately, NATO forces intentionally and under strict orders destroyed this irrigation system, and even went further to destroy the factory or the pipes for this project were manufactured. This was a project that was aimed at helping Libyans. So why destroy it? If your goal is to free the same Libyans, that is how you saw it on this video, titled "The Real Reason Why Gaddafi Was Killed." We hope you now have ample facts to back your doubts after watching for a quick summary. Although Muammar Gaddafi had his own personal shortcomings, what is widely known about him by people in Libya and Africa was that he was at the verge of getting Africa out of external control, as you have just watched. Many sources gave different ideas about the real reason why Gaddafi was killed, which normally were based on what they perceived about the whole situation of establishing a new currency in Africa. Several biographers and observers characterized Gaddafi as a populist. He was well known for appearing on screens, severally to answer questions that people asked him. As a highly esteemed figure, Gaddafi dominated Libyan politics for 4 decades and was a subject of a pervasive cult of personalities. He received numerous awards and acclaim for his anti-imperialist stance, unwavering support for Arab and subsequently African unity, and his pivotal role in the development of Libya. In 1977, Gaddafi led the transformation of Libya into a new socialist state. While officially assuming a symbolic position in governance, he retained leadership over both the military and the revolutionary committees tasked with maintaining order and quelling dissent. We've witnessed the assassinations of numerous African leaders who dedicated themselves to liberating their people from Western influence or uniting the continent. Consider figures like Patrice Lumumba of Congo, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa of Nigeria, and Thomas Sankara, among others. History seems to be echoing itself, albeit with changing actors. Africans must resist external influences and collaborate with their leaders to foster development within their nations. If you found this video intriguing, please show your support with a like. What ramifications do you believe Gaddafi's death has had on Africa? Was standing against Gaddafi a colossal mistake for Libyans when he needed their support the most? Which present-day African leader possesses the boldness to undertake what Gaddafi was doing for the continent? Did Gaddafi's dream of the African gold dinar perish with him? These are questions demanding answers from our African leaders.